Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for April 4th, 2024. This time I'd like to call the meeting to order. Commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall. We also have staff from the City Attorney and Clerk's offices as well as City Planning Department. If you are joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you're here. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you'll be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org. They will be replied as quickly as possible. And with that, we will begin with roll call. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Smith,
Present.
Commissioner Lorcher. Here. Commissioner Sandoval, Commissioner Grace,
Here.
Commissioner Garrett,
Here.
Chairperson Seal.
Here. All right, first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. File number H 2023-0043 for Bladen subdivision will be open for the sole purpose of continuing to a regularly scheduled meeting. It will be open for that purpose only, so if there's anybody here tonight to testify for that application, we will not be taking testimony on it. With that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 2024 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? Motion carries. Okay, this time I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to the Comprehensive Plan and Unified Development Code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up in advance to testify. We'll need you to state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen, and you will be able to run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will yield time to you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. Please remember, we generally do not call people back up. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. So at this time, I would like to continue the public hearing for item number H 2023-0043 Bladen subdivision for a continuance to the date of May 16th, 2024.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue file number H 2023-0043 for Bladen subdivision to the date of May 16th, 2024. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Application is continued. Now I'd like to open the public hearing for item number H 2023-0055 for Burnside Ridge Estates, and we will begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. First application before you tonight is a request for annexation and zoning and a preliminary plat. This site consists of 121.31 acres of land. It's owned RUT in Ada County and is generally located southwest of the West Victory Road and South Linder Road intersection. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is low-density residential on the eastern 41-acre portion and medium density residential on the western 80-acre portion of the site. The applicant is requesting annexation of 123.28 acres of land with R2 zoning, which consists of 11.91 acres, R4 zoning, which consists of 89.55 acres, and R8 zoning, which consists of 21.82 acres, as shown on the zoning exhibit before you, for the development of 263 building lots. One of the 5 existing homes is proposed to remain on a lot in the subdivision at the northeast corner of the site, and that is on this lot right here. The other existing homes will be removed prior to development of the phase in which they are located. The low-density R2 zoning and the medium low-density R4 zoning is proposed around the perimeter of the development as a transition to rural residential properties in the county, and the medium-density R8 zoning is proposed internal to the development. An overall gross density of 2.62 units per acre is proposed for the subdivision. The low-density residential future land use map designation allows residential development of 3 or fewer units per acre, while the medium-density residential designation allows 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. As is, the gross density of the low-density designated area is 2.81 units per acre, which is consistent with the desired density. The density of the medium-density designated area is 2.27 units per acre, with the conceptual lots in the holding area, which is slightly below the desired density. The comprehensive plan allows for adjacent abutting future land use map designations when appropriate and approved as part of the public hearing with a land development application to be used with some caveats. The applicant proposes to use the abutting low-density designation to the west and the low-density designation on the eastern portion of this site toward a portion of the medium-density designated area on this property, as shown on the exhibit there on the left. With the proposed application of the low-density designation, the gross density of the low-density designated area, including the holding area, is 2.4 units per acre, and the gross density of the remaining medium-density designated area is 2.64 units per acre, which rounds up to 3 units per acre and is consistent with the desired density for both designations. Staff is supportive of the applicant's proposal for decreased density in the areas proposed, as it allows for larger half-acre lots abutting the west boundary of the subdivision, adjacent to large rural agricultural lots in Stetson Estates subdivision, for a good transition in density as desired in the comprehensive plan. The proposed preliminary plat consists of 263 building lots, 33 common lots, and 1 other lot, which is a holding area for future re-subdivision. And that holding area is located at the southwest corner of the site here. 2 collector streets are proposed in accord with the master street map. One is a north-south street from Victory, and that is this one right here. See my cursor. And the other is the east-west collector street along the southern boundary of the site. These are proposed in accord with the master street map. Average lot sizes are as follows. Half-acre lots in the R2 zone, quarter-acre lots in the R4 zone, and 0.17 acre lots in the R8 zone. The subdivision is proposed to develop in 4 phases as shown on the phasing plan on the right. The first phase, located on the northeast portion of the site, includes the northern portion of the north-south collector street and access from Victory Road, and a local street access from Linder Road. This phase is proposed to include all of the street buffer improvements, including sidewalk along Victory and Linder roads. The second phase is located on the northwest portion of the site and includes the southern portion of the collector street. The third phase is located along the southeast portion of the site and includes the east-west collector street access from Linder Road. The fourth phase is the Kelly property and is located along the east side of the development between phases 1 and 3 and fronts on Linder Road. That is this area right here. Staff is recommending the phasing plan is revised to include the holding area lot in phase 3. And again, that's this area right here. Currently, the phasing plan excludes this area and does not include it with any of the phases proposed. Again, the holding area located at the southwest corner of the site is not currently serviceable by city sewer and won't be for quite some time until the temporary lift station on 10 Mile and the 15-inch trunk line to the lift station is constructed. At staff's request, a concept plan was submitted for that area as shown, showing how the future development will integrate with this development. A total of 40 building lots are shown in that area with the extension of local and collector streets. Again, none of these improvements will be made with the subdivision property. That will simply be included as one large lot for future re-subdivision in the future. The existing Jackson home that is proposed to remain is required to connect to city sewer and water service, take access internally from within the subdivision, and change their address. And that again is this house here at the northeast corner, this lot here fronting on Linder. The property owner at 3801 South Linder Road, Colleen Kelly, again, that's this area right here, requests council approval to remain on well and septic until her property redevelops with phase 4, as utilities will not be accessible until at a minimum phase 3. Retention of her existing access from Linder Road is also requested until such time as the property redevelops. She is amenable to installation of the Linder Road street buffer and frontage improvements, except for the area where her driveway is located, including sidewalk being installed on her property in the interim. There are 5 existing driveways from Linder Road and 4 from Victory Road that will be closed with development of the proposed subdivision. A new north-south collector street, South Farmyard Avenue, is proposed from Victory Road, which will extend to the southern boundary of the site with development of the holding area. The right-of-way for this street should extend to the east property line on the northern portion of the site as required by ACHD for future access to the collector street for the Coleman property. And that is this area right here. A new east-west collector street, East Holstein Drive, is proposed from Linder Road along the southern boundary of the site, which will extend to the west property boundary with development of the holding area. Another local street access, Pivot Drive, is proposed from Linder Road to the north of the collector street. Internal local public streets are proposed for access within the development. The development is required to comply with the subdivision design and improvement standards in the UDC. There are 4 block faces that exceed the maximum block face standard. The plat should be revised to comply, or requests for council waivers to the standard should be submitted prior to the council hearing for council's consideration. A 25-foot wide street buffer is required along Victory and Linder Roads, both arterial streets, and a 20-foot wide buffer is required along internal collector streets, landscaped in accord with UDC standards. Staff is recommending, as a provision of the development agreement, that 10-foot wide detached sidewalks are provided along all collector and arterial streets within and abutting the site for public safety. The Pathways Master Plan depicts a 10-foot wide pathway along the internal collector streets and along the north side of the Calkins Lateral. Based on the area of each zone, excluding the holding area, a minimum of 12.59 acres of qualified open space is required to be provided within the development. The open space exhibit submitted by the applicant depicts 11.53 acres, which is 1.06 acres below the required amount. Some of the areas included are considered remnant areas and don't qualify, while other areas, such as the parkways, aren't counted but could qualify if they meet the required standards. The Calkins lateral easement also doesn't qualify if the lateral is piped as proposed and isn't landscaped, but could qualify as linear open space if it's left open within the waterway as an amenity, and a 10-foot wide buffer is provided for active access along the waterway. Staff is recommending that the open space exhibit is revised prior to the council hearing to comply with the minimum standards. An abundance of site amenities are proposed, exceeding UDC standards by more than double. Based on the development area, excluding the holding area, a minimum of 20 site amenity points are required to be provided, some from each category. A total of 42 points are proposed, which consist of a clubhouse, commercial outdoor kitchen, outdoor fire ring, public art, 2 picnic areas, and a fitness course from the quality of life category. A swimming pool and spa, tot lot, and 2 sports courts, pickleball, from the recreation activity area category. 1.25 approximately miles of multi-use pathways from the pedestrian and bicycle circulation category, and a bicycle repair station from the multimodal category. The holding area will be required to comply with the minimum UDC standards for common area, common open space, and site amenities with re-subdivision. Staff recommends as a development agreement provision that the use of common open space and site amenities is shared throughout the development area between the holding area and the development proposed with this application. The Williams Northwest Gas Pipeline crosses the northeast corner of this site on the Jackson property within a 75-foot wide easement. The Calkins lateral crosses the southwest portion of this site within a 60-foot wide federal easement, 30 feet each side of the center line. And that is this green area right here, which is a little misrepresentative because the Boise Project Board of Control will not allow any landscaping at all within their easement. So that will not be green space. The Boise Project Board has agreed to a lesser width of 40 feet on the easement if the lateral is piped as proposed, but will not, as I stated, allow any improvements or landscaping within their easement other than gravel. The Gibbons lateral is piped and runs off-site along the west boundary of the site. A 7-foot wide easement exists on this property, which is proposed to run along the rear of abutting building lots. The board will not allow the easement to be located on building lots. Therefore, the plat will need to be revised to include this area in a common lot to be maintained by the homeowners association. Conceptual building elevations were submitted as shown for the proposed 1- and 2-story single-family residential detached dwellings. And 2 different barn-style concept elevations were submitted for the clubhouse as shown. The architectural style of the homes will be a mix of contemporary forms and modern farmhouse styles. Building materials range from stone to stucco and board and batten siding with natural colors. Home sizes are planned to be 2,200 square feet or larger, similar to homes in surrounding developments. Because homes on lots that face collector streets, Farmyard Avenue and Holstein Drive, and arterial streets, Victory and Linder Road, will be highly visible, staff is recommending the rear and or sides of 2-story homes on these lots incorporate articulation through changes in 2 or more of the following. Modulation, for example, projections, recesses, step backs, pop-outs, bays, banding, porches, balconies, material types, or other integrated architectural elements to break up monotonous wall planes and roof lines that are visible from the public streets. There has been no written testimony submitted on this application. Staff is recommending approval with the requirement of a development agreement per the conditions in the staff report. The applicant is here tonight to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. The applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
And hi, neighbor. I think this is the first time I've been here for Brian to be on the commission stage. Welcome. So my name is, as some of you know, is Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant. I think this application is actually in pretty good shape. And so I'm going to kind of fly through some elements of it, highlight a few other elements of it. But we are largely in agreement with staff. As you heard, there's a few items that need to be tweaked, and one of those is that Calkins lateral open space strategy, because that will answer the overall open space question. So, but I'll show you what I mean by that as we go through the presentation. So again, annexation, development agreement, and pre-plat are what before you. Some of you might recall this has got a bit of a history to it. This was originally applied for back in 2021. It came before this Planning and Zoning Commission, got a unanimous recommendation of approval. And then we went to the City Council and ran into a situation where council made some policy decisions as to whether they wanted to grow into that area or not. As if you're aware, there was a reconsideration submitted, and we think that council maybe didn't take into account all of the facts with regard to what utilities and things were available at the time. But since then, it's been a couple of years. Development has continued in that area, and we think that this is appropriate to be back and forth in front of everyone. So the project is on 121 acres. I just wanted to kind of remind everybody where we're located. It's got great access to 2 freeway interchanges. It's right in the line of development as you're working from east to west coming from the city. The adjacent developments, there's a significant development all around it. We're against the city limits. We're within the area of city impact. As you can see, CUNA's kind of sneaking up on us there on the south. There are large county parcels on our west and north, and again, city development on the east. I kind of wanted to emphasize this as well. So it's an area that is ready for development. The square mile immediately to the east has been entitled and is under construction. The Windrow project that some of you might remember came before you just a couple of months ago is that R8 property that's down on the south here, if I can make the mouse work. So that has completed the entire block face of Linder there in terms of entitlement. And so this is certainly ready to move on to development further west. There were a number of opportunities and constraints. Sonia mentioned some of it. You've got the fuel pipeline on the northeast. You have the Calkins lateral and the Givens laterals. We identified a path forward with regard to Miss Kelly's home, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. And we are providing density that bridges between the more dense development on the east that's coming from the city and the less dense development on the west that's already occurred in the county. So this is just to kind of emphasize the locations of that pipeline and the lateral. So this is where things are a little interesting, and you saw that with the map that Sonia showed you guys about, and with the land use designations and how they needed to be interpreted. So as you can see here, the property has a low-density residential side of it and a medium-density residential side of it. But what made that a little bit challenging is that the medium-density side is on the outside, right? The area where you would think you would be going low. So we have the low where we probably could have used some high, and the high where we could probably have used some low. And so we worked with staff, worked within the comprehensive plan to be able to use to slide those designations up to 50% in the medium density area, and that way stay within the comp plan densities. But again, we are within those comp plan densities, and we are relatively low in order to be able to transition to the county lots on our west. Zoning as proposed is very consistent with what you see in the areas nearby with the R4, the R8s, and then as has been shown, we have the R2 on our far west to help transition to the neighboring lots. Again, this is an overview. As Sonia mentioned, gross density of 2.6 dwelling units per acre and 11.8% open space. This is a close-up on the zoning, but I did want to emphasize that holding area. So that holding area includes 21.05 acres. That is an area that we had originally actually planned to leave out of the application. And the reason for that is because it can't currently be served, right? So we didn't want to have a suggestion that there's a portion of the property that can't be served, so therefore it's not ready for annexation. Discussed that, have a good relationship with staff, discussed it with Bill. Staff's strong preference was that we actually bring it in now, even though it's not ready to be not eligible for sewer service. And the reason for that is that staff did not want that area to somehow potentially become an enclave in the county if it didn't ultimately develop. So we went ahead and did that, but just want to emphasize that holding area is not going to develop until the services are available. We included it because staff asked us to. I don't know if this is a record, but it's pretty high. To be able to close 9 existing driveways and replace them with just the 3 is pretty great for area traffic safety. Obviously, every time there's a driveway, there's a potential for conflict. We're making the expected improvements on Linder and Victory, so you'll have the green space and the 25-foot landscape buffers. The turn lanes will be provided, and then internal to the project, we'll have the type of traffic calming that you would expect. So open space. So our regional pathways are being provided in the locations that the Parks and Pathways folks have requested. So that's on Linder, it's up on Victory, it's along our internal collectors, and it's along the Calkins lateral. With regard to open space, as I mentioned, we're going to continue to work with staff to get more of the project qualified. And just to kind of add a little bit more of a gloss to that, so Boise Project has actually become more restrictive on what you can do in their easements than they even were before. And they've taken the position that you really can only do gravel within their easement at this point. You used to be able to do some turf and some shrubs. It's gravel only. So we're looking at two alternatives. One would be leave the lateral open. That means a 60-foot space. And then you got the 20-foot buffer. And then whatever additional you need in order to make it work. So you could be looking at 90 feet at that point, which to us is a pretty big constraint on the project. We also discussed with Boise Project, and I think this is the way we're going to go, is that if you pipe it, they will reduce the easement to 40 feet, and then you can put your pathway just outside that 40 feet, so you have 10 feet for the pathway, and then 5 feet for landscape. And what we'd like to do is work with staff to come up with a solution on that would allow us to qualify a chunk of that as qualified open space. That would, according to my very non-engineer, non-surveyor calculations, should make up for the deficit, because it's about half to 2/3 of a mile that Calkins lateral covers. And if we can qualify the pathway and the landscape areas, we should get pretty darn close. But I think you've got a condition language right now that works to allow us to get that sorted out with staff. Okay, so the amenities, this is a standout element of the project. So I've done, you couldn't tell by my hairline, but I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've done a few large planned communities around the Treasure Valley. Planned communities are a different animal than a regular subdivision. Some of you might be familiar with them, but with planned communities, one of the things you have to do is this placemaking exercise, and to show that there's areas internal to the project where people want to gather and they want to do things. And so, Harris Ranch is a project I worked on, Dry Creek, and I've got another one going in Elmore County where we have these town centers that we've designed. But you don't see that on regular subdivisions, right? That is one of the things that I think is really cool about this project, is that there really is that level of placemaking here, with the tribute to the farm heritage of the property and the attempts to reuse the farm implements and the architecture and the construction. And so you've got these gardens and you've got fields and open spaces to bring everyone together at the center of the project. And as Sonia mentioned, they more than double the number of amenity points that are required with this one, which is pretty remarkable. This is just to kind of build on that. The idea is to retain that legacy of the family farm. So a lot of these pieces would be reused within the project. The picnic shelter concepts are also, a tribute to that agricultural heritage. The clubhouse concepts that you've already seen, kind of that barn look to them. And, an entry monument concept that actually contributes to the placemaking as well, that provides not just a generic, typical subdivision monument sign, but something that ties the project together and gives you a sense of place as you're driving into the project. With the home designs you've seen, we anticipate contemporary and modern farmhouse. Let's talk a little bit about utilities. And this was to my point earlier about the prior application. I think it's important to just remember that the project has been planned, and there are utilities at the project. The utilities were brought there as part of the sewer concept planning that was done in connection with the large, I think it was 1,500 acre annexation that the city did a few years ago. And that sewer is there. Public Works, you can see their review there down on the left, saying that sewer is available at the site. You can see the manhole locations on the bottom right. Domestic water is the same. It's there. You can see the hydrant locations on both Victory and Linder on the bottom right as well. So let me wrap this up. So as we were looking at the project, again, there were a number of competing goals that we needed to emphasize. One is we've got the county lots on the west side. We've got the city lots on the east side. We've got medium density residential designations on our west where we would like lower, and we've got low density residential on our east where we would like higher. We've figured out a way to be the bridge from the more dense city development to the less dense county development. There are no traffic issues that have been identified by ACHD. We agree with their report. And again, we think we've worked within the comprehensive plan to bridge the gap between these various densities. So in terms of our homework, we see it as we need to go work with staff to qualify an additional acre of open space. And then we need to work with staff on the block face questions that they raised and the amenity design around the irrigation facilities. Again, the Calkins lateral pathway. But we are in agreement with all of the remaining conditions with just one tweak that I'll mention. But these are some of the things that have been addressed, including the addition of the VRT bus stop. We're adding a multimodal amenity, which, in the larger concept of this project with a number of amenities we've provided, a bike repair stand or something like that is not that big of a deal, but something that certainly helps. And so we would ask for your recommendation of approval, but the one tweak I would ask for, and this is more of a limitation on us, I would say. But I really want to emphasize this point that the holding area can't develop until those utilities are in place. And so I didn't want to have any confusion with the prior condition where it said that it would be included in the third phase of development. I didn't want anyone to read that and think that it's going to be developed with the third phase. And so my suggestion was to just say that it'll be part of the recorded development agreement, platted as a mega lot when the adjoining areas of the project are subdivided, and that it would only be developed when municipal services are available at the site. And I can leave this up for the commission's use. So with that, I've talked a bit, so I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I was taking notes for certain. I have a question to start off with here, and that is the timing between when you think you'll be to that third phase, fourth phase of the subdivision, and when basically city services are going to be available to that area. What's the timing on that, or what's the gap in timing that you project?
Yeah, Commissioner Seal, it's anticipated overall about a 5-year build out. So call it 3.5 to 4 years,
Okay.
something in that range, sound about right. And then, so that I think you may be focusing on the house that's down there and whether it's going to have access to services or anything like that in the meantime. So we have the condition that allows it to stay on well and septic, but that house is anticipated that it would likely go away. And so that's more of a temporary condition that's being accounted for with the condition of approval.
Yeah, and that was my next question, but you kind of answered it, and I'm kind of thinking on that one. I understand why staff wants that holding area included in a phase, just so it doesn't get left out. But the house, in my mind, kind of fits that same stage where I'd kind of like to see that come in the third phase instead. I understand, why you would want to keep that as long as you can, but at some point, let's tear the Band-Aid off and get it done. So I think that it would be more appropriate in a sooner stage than a later stage, but others can chime in on that if they want to.
And Mr. Chair, I would just say that the timing for that, you notice that it's a pretty small phase. The idea with that is to give that homeowner as much time as possible, so that she's not sucked into a prior larger phase and leaving, call it prematurely. I don't know if that's the right word, but right. that the idea is to try to accommodate that homeowner.
Okay. Understood, but it's, if the property's sold as part of this, I mean, you kind of got to go along with we have to do what's right for the city, not for an individual.
Sure.
So that's my only point in that. Though I do have a question, so I'm going to take up a lot of time here. The windmill, is it a working windmill? Does it provide power?
Mr. Chair, we're not sure if it's a working windmill, but if it will provide power, but as long as it's structural, so I don't anticipate, but let me put it this way. I don't think that there were plans in place to have it connect to anything and actually powering it. It was more of a cosmetic thing, but that's certainly something we could look into.
Okay. And then on the, basically the ditch that runs through there, is the reasoning behind piping it, just purely space? I mean, that's kind of what I'm understanding, is it's just a space issue.
That's a major constraint, yeah, because if you pipe it, the easement goes to 40 feet. If you leave it open, it's 60, but then anything you need to do for the city goes on top of that 60. So you've essentially lost a row of homes at that point if you do that.
Yep. Okay. My memory of this is that there's a significant pitch to the property too, especially as you get higher on it, but is there room in there to kind of push that space into the holding area to accommodate that space? And the reason, it's kind of known that I ride bikes and I like to ride bikes in Meridian. So the questions that I'm asking here, because this sets the precedent for what's going to be done. So whoever connects on either end of that is also going to do the same thing, more than likely. So I'm a fan of, having that space open, having a pathway that goes along it. One of my favorite places to ride in Meridian is in between 10 Mile and Linder, between McMillan and Ustick. There's a pathway there that would be like this if you did it that way. You left it open. They allowed landscaping to happen in there, so I understand that that's one of the drawbacks of it, is how do you beautify it if you can't put grass and shrubs on there. So, but anyway, I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. Maybe some ideas around what might be able to happen in there to accommodate it to be more of a, more of something that's really an integral piece to it instead of something we have to work around.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so there's, I guess I have a couple thoughts on that. The width of the pathway itself is going to be the 10-foot pathway, regardless of whether it's a tiled lateral or an open lateral. Really what we're talking about is the area that you have to keep open subject to the easement. So it may feel more open, but it's the difference between 20 from center line or 30 from center line. And so, in our view, and again, we're open to recommendations from the commission, because as I said, this is something we need to have additional conversations with Bill about. But with a 20-foot from center line open space, open area, 40 feet total, then a 10-foot pathway, then 5 feet of landscaping, I don't think it's going to feel constrained at all for cyclists. And like if you went down to at the Windrow project, they had a portion that stayed open, and then they had a portion that was tiled, and that one, it was more based on the geography and how it could work there. So definitely there are practical considerations to our preference currently to pipe the ditch. But I don't think it's going to feel like a closed chute. It's going to feel pretty wide open still. It's a shame that we can't work with Boise Project to allow for more of the landscaping, because the other issue that it does for us is because we can't do any of the landscaping, we have a much harder time getting it qualified as open space, which means we have to provide that somewhere else.
Right.
So that basically takes that open space, makes it something that we can't benefit from on the entitlement side. And then we have to push density out elsewhere. And we're already very low on the density side right now. So losing lots pushes us outside of compliance with the comp plan. So that was a bit rambly, but those are kind of my thoughts.
I appreciate the feedback on that. I understand that we're, right there on some of the limitations, so we don't want to take anything away from that for certain. So commissioners, anyone else? Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, just a brief thing, and I appreciate the dueling kind of priorities that you have. You just mentioned loss of density on the open space side of things. One thing, just curious, is whether it's been considered of actually, you have some areas that are lower than target density, maybe slightly increasing density there to free, by shrinking lot sizes some to kind of claw back that open space. Has there been kind of some discussion of that possibly to kind of maybe two birds, one stone a little bit?
Commissioner Smith, so there's, like you said, competing motivations here. We feel like we're making a commitment to the neighbors to try to keep those lots as big as possible. So half-acre lots within the city on city services is a pretty rare thing. And you have to push the density up in the rest of the project to be able to be economical for the city to serve it, because half-acre lots are not economical for the city. So, I've looked at it from that perspective. We've also looked at it from the perspective of, if I look at that open space map and I know what I still need to make up, and I look at that Calkins lateral as none of it being qualified right now, I see all of the delta being made up there as soon as we can figure out a solution with staff on that. And so that's where our focus has been trying to figure out how to get that Calkins area qualified, because I think that helps us more than shrinking up lots against the neighbors.
That's fair. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, anything else?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sandoval.
So June 2022, you were denied by city council.
Mhm.
So other than the holding area, and you had around a 7.5% decrease, what burden is less impact on the city, I guess? Where is that? We're gonna go forward, I mean.
Sure. So again, the decision to annex is a city council decision, and it's a policy-based decision. And back when that decision was made, there was 2 items that were cited. And again, this came through P&Z with a full recommendation for approval, had a staff recommendation for approval. Council suggested during the hearing that utilities were not available and that this was not part of the priority growth map, which, if you've been around long enough, you saw it circulated through the halls of the city, but it was never adopted. The version that was referred to during the hearing did not reflect the current reality at the time. So for example, it didn't have the new fire station, didn't show the new sewer shed, didn't show new development in the area. We requested reconsideration and we weren't able to get it back in front of them. So in this case, what we've done is we waited it out. 2 years have gone by. There's been an additional development immediately adjacent to us that has been approved, that has, just like our application, has shown no negative impact on the city, both in terms of traffic or the ability to serve with utilities. So Commissioner Sandoval, I guess I would say that I was confused by the council's position before, but we're pretty confident that with an additional 2 years and with the development immediately to the east, and then showing again that the capacity is there. And, something I can't emphasize enough is that the city's actually invested in utilities to serve this area specifically. So the city, when we did the big 1,500 acre annexation a few years ago, the city invested in running sewer and water lines out to this area. And so to say we're not going to use that investment, to me, is a difficult thing to understand as well. So I can't put myself, I don't think I could actually say that I agree with the decision before, but I do think that circumstances have changed a bit. And I think that if you look at the evidence, that the factors for annexation are all satisfied, given that the services are there and it is contiguous, and there are no negative impacts.
Thank you. Is this an inappropriate time to ask a staff question too? Should
Oh,
we-
feel free. If you have a follow-up, go right ahead.
Okay, so my main concern here is you're asking that they put this holding area in phase 3, which says they cannot develop phase 4 basically until they're waiting on city services, correct, to be delivered. Is that not accurate?
No, I'm laughing,
Chairman
not
Seal.
for.
Commissioner Sandoval, no, that's not it at all. That holding area is being platted as one large mega lot, which will be re-subdivided in the future. And that means that a new preliminary plat will be submitted in the future to re-subdivide it in a final plat down the road when services are available. Staff is asking for that lot to be included in phase 3 because the current phasing plan does not include it in any of the phases. And what will happen if it's not included in a phasing plan is it will be left out of the overall subdivision. It will not be included as one large mega lot, and it will create a remnant parcel then that's not part of a subdivision. So that is why staff is asking for it to be included in phase 3. There are no services to it. There are no lots platted in it. None of the construction drawings show services to it. They don't show roads through it, anything. Staff is not in favor of the modification to the condition that's requested by the applicant for that reason. Does that answer your questions, or do you need further clarification?
It does to an extent. And I didn't look at the phasing map. The lines were a little dashed. It was a little hard to read. So why not in phase 4? Is that section of the property getting developed before?
Phase 4 is not adjacent to the boundary of that
Okay.
lot, is why.
Okay, thank you.
It needs to be contiguous.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask I was going to ask this question when the time was appropriate, and this might be a good time to ask if you don't, I just want to clarify
Absolutely.
the request from the applicant, from Mr. Clark. 'Cause I think, I may not be tracking the language, but as I look at the phasing plan right now, phase 2 and phase 3 only are adjacent to the holding area. But you can, so it seems like your language gets to the exact same spot as what the staff condition requires, just sort of words it differently, but what am I missing there? Because I don't understand the distinction.
Mr. Chair, Attorney Starman, so the reason I laughed, and I meant no insult, I hope you didn't take any. The reason I laughed is because my concern with the condition was that someone would ask that question. So, because I read the condition as implying that that it was somehow tied into the development of phase 3, right? I don't want there to be any confusion over the fact that we don't think the holding area can develop right now and that we're including it only at staff's request. And so that's why the suggested change that I've put forward, really, it arrives at the same point when it comes to platting it as a mega lot, if that's what was intended. But I do want to emphasize, it can't develop. We have to wait until utilities are available, so.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, thank you, Mr. Clark, that's helpful. So just to kind of reframe, I think that the language is similar. I understand Mr. Clark's point in trying to create clarity relative to the holding area. As I understand the condition, both what staff's trying to accomplish and the applicant is, with the way Mr. Clark proposed language, when it says when the phases surrounding the holding area have been subdivided, the mega lot needs to be platted at that point as well. And so I think that really, because the mega lot is only surrounded by phase 2 and phase 3, it would have to be platted at the time phase 3 is platted. Would you agree with that, Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so I think you kind of get the same spot, but I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to clarify, because I wasn't seeing the distinction, other than I understand Mr. Clark's point relative to clarity on the holding area.
Yeah, and I'll kind of go back to now that I understand phase 4 a little bit better, I think if you just got rid of phase 4, did phase 3, and did that all in the last one, then this would probably be moot for the most part, so.
So in other words, that phase 4 would be consolidated into phase 3?
Correct,
And again, that would just move up that homeowner's,
correct.
okay.
Again, there's a whole lot of things going on that affect a whole lot of people, and we're trying to protect one homeowner. I don't want, protect's probably not the right word, but basically give them an extended period of time to enjoy what they have on their property, which I completely understand. But at the same time, if you're going to sell it and you're going to do it, it's just part of the plan. So let's not drag this on for everybody else would be my, that would be the point I would make in that. So that's just creating a lot more, a little bit more work for folks to have to do in order to accommodate that when, to me, let's just make it part of phase 3, plat the holding area and we're done.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you know, the burden of that, really falls on the applicant. It's not really a city services, city issue from my perspective. It'd save the applicant some money to do it all at once. But the applicant's trying to work with this neighbor to give them as much time as possible. So that's the reason it's been done that way.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Larcher, go ahead.
for between phase 3 and phase 4, aren't we talking 3 to 5 years anyway, though?
Between those phases?
I mean, you're right. So you want to give the homeowner in phase 4 as much time that they can enjoy their home, but phase 1 is going to be a construction site. And since I currently live in the impact area of Highway 16, I completely understand
That feeling?
having very large trucks making a lot of noise and dust on a consistent basis. So, but I mean, by the time you get to phase 3, you're looking at 3 years, right?
Something like that.
So, would phase 4 be any further out than 3 to 5 years anyway?
I mean, it buys that homeowner probably 6 months to a year. The typical track is, I mean, you're probably not going to do a final phase of each phase, a final plat of each phase all at once, right? Typically, you're not going to go that big because of surety and bonding requirements and financing and all that sort of thing. So if you could run through final plats on these, call it every 6 months, then with the goal of an overall build out in 5 years, that buys that homeowner probably a year.
Did the applicant give the homeowner a specific time?
There's not a specific time, no.
So they didn't say, okay, 10 years from now, you
You're
have to
out.
go,
Yeah.
but it's open-ended.
Mhm.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, my only concern in this is just that it drags on and on and on and on and on, and I mean, that's kind of, it creates, it creates the opportunity for that, for certain. So I think that's, in my mind, I would like to avoid that. That's my opinion on it. So I do want to say, Commissioner Grace, you did want to speak earlier, so I just want to make sure we're not skipping over you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heath, I just wanted to get clarity on, I appreciated Commissioner Sandoval's question because it was sort of going to be one of my questions about the sort of what has changed since the last time a project was proposed and brought to city council. And you described some things. And just to clarify, are you saying that sort of the growth in that area that you've described has happened since that time that the proposal came forward in 2021, 22?
Yeah, so since 21 and 22, and Bill might be the best person to answer some of this, but if I can find a good map for you. A little slow. Okay, so since 21 and 22, you've seen additional development in that square mile between Linder and Meridian, including the project that is immediately across the street, which is the R8 project below. In that 21 to 22 period, the city council has also extended the plat approvals for Brundage Estates, which is immediately across the street. And the development and the construction in that square mile has continued apace since then. So in my view, there's been 2 more years. There's been several applications have been improved. Their applications have been extended. The utilities, again, are all there, and they were there at the time. And there seems to have been some confusion when that decision was made as to whether they were available.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's what I was looking for to just confirm that this was it wasn't already there when they were considering it at the time. These are new developments.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, just to follow, if I could. One of the things that we've talked about a lot is the transition to the sort of the other larger county areas. And I noticed in the staff report, there was a comment maybe that this body, this commission should consider whether the surrounding neighbors and the public believe that that was an adequate transition. And I just wondered if you'd gotten any feedback from those, those neighbors about whether they thought that was indeed a solid transition.
Yeah, Commissioner Grace, I wasn't at the neighborhood meeting. There are not, there's not any written public testimony. I'm sure you'll hear from some folks tonight as to what they think. In my experience, everybody wants more, more open space and fewer lots around them. So I expect that there would be some conversations about that. But to have, these half-acre lots within the city and on city services, responsibly, it's hard to go much bigger than that. And so that's the way that we've kind of looked at it. And again, our densities are very much on the low end for what the comprehensive plan calls for in this area.
And about those densities, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying is that in order to achieve an average gross density that complies with the comp plan, you're saying you use parts of the low density with the medium density? Was that what was the?
Yeah, let me show you. So the comprehensive plan anticipates some flexibility when it comes to the way that it's to be interpreted. And essentially what it says is that, and I'm sorry, this is slow getting through here. Essentially what it says is that you are allowed to use adjacent comp plan designations so long as you don't go across an arterial or a collector, and so long as you don't use up more than 50% of that designation's open space within the project, right? So if you look here, sorry, the mouse is not being very friendly. Of course, it's jumping that. You can see the north-south collector there that's got blue on the right or teal on the right and purple on the left. So we are able to pull the low-density designation to the west up to that arterial or to that collector. But we also have low density on the other side that we can pull the other direction. So essentially what it does is as long as we keep 50% of the medium density residential area, then we're still in compliance with the comp plan. And ultimately it's if a neighbor is concerned and wants to see density reduced, what we've done is we've applied more low density residential to the project than what the comprehensive plan currently on its face would show.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because I was a little confused when I read it and then.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the clarity.
It took us a minute to wrap our heads around it too, so.
Thank you, Mr.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
So now that you've gotten all the way over here, a question back on the phasing.
Oh, sure.
You can have them go to the very last slide.
Yeah,
in the-
exactly. On the opposite end of for the staff or I don't know, for Kurt, is there anything in code or in kind of requirement for how long a phase can last? In terms of, because I'm thinking it seems like, to my mind, we can include maybe some language to assure that that holding area would be platted, but with an understanding that it wouldn't be developed. Is there anything that, also with the phase 4 aspect, is there anything that prevents them from, completing a portion of phase 3 and, giving that homeowner as much time as possible within the phase? Or is there something that requires them finish within, say, a 2-year time period or something?
Yes, Chairman, Commissioner Smith, there's a 2-year limit time that they have to obtain city engineer's signature on the final plat. They can't request an extension on that. But just to clarify, there are no improvements though planned or proposed or required in the holding area. So there's nothing there for us to require them to develop.
Thank you. So that 2 years, just to clarify, sorry, been a long day. That's on a per phase
It is, yes.
level? Okay, cool. Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, before we turn it over to public testimony, and I'd also want to let the commission know that their phasing plan is off a little bit. I believe when I read the staff report, they were going to do all of the street frontages with phase one. So that one graphic doesn't represent it going along Linder Road. So I just wanted to point that out, that there's a significant infrastructure investment there with phase one as well along the street frontages.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that input. All right,
All good?
thank you.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
Mr. Chair, no one has signed up.
There's a bunch of people in here. Does anybody want to come up and testify? Come right on. Always love the public to come in and tell us what they think. Evening. Just need your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Paula Connolly and 3878 South Rustler Lane, Meridian. I have more clarification questions regarding the holding area. So am I understanding that they have to come back in and have that area reapproved after when they replat it?
Sonia, do you want to put that into code ease?
Yes, Chairman, members of the commission. Yes, that, let me get to- that area is being platted as one large mega lot right now. That's it. But no development can occur on that until services are available in the future and they come back in with a new subdivision plat for that area.
Okay, so
We-
it will actually be considered a second subdivision that
It is,
attaches
yes.
to it.
Yes.
So at that point, what happens to density? Because it's a new subdivision, do they have to start back over and it's medium density and they have no low density to switch it with? And because the original, back in 21, that area extended the half-acre lots. What are the chances that all changes because this is approved and then they have to go back and replat that? And then they're now required to do everything a subdivision does, such as another 10% of open space and everything else, and densities aren't met. So then those lots get lower and they're up against 5 and 10 acre. And that's the transition that they were trying to be respectful of.
Yeah, so that's why staff asked them to submit this conceptual development plan that's before you here. We wanted to ensure that there wasn't a higher density developed on that site. The density that they're showing is consistent with the density that they're approved with this application and consistent with the.
Okay, so if this is approved, then that essentially,
They are
is a-
tied to develop this
tied to that.
property in general conformance with this conceptual development plan.
okay.
If anything, the lots could be possibly reduced if they have to add space for common open space, but it shouldn't be increased.
Okay.
And we have seen this before, and I'm glad that staff did this because we've had applications come through where either a conceptual plan wasn't submitted, to something that would be an enclave, or they're trying to, have a real huge variance to what that would look like. So this right here kind of helps to protect that. This is basically in no way makes it to where this is what they're going to do and this is how they're going to do it, but it does keep the, basically the essence of what they're asking them to do with, the larger lots abutting the county land and things like that. So
But one thing that can change is they could be required to add in 10%, which is going to take away from those lots then.
I don't know that would happen, but, and that's, I, trust me, as a citizen, if I owned one of the lots next to this, I would feel much better about them having to submit the concept plan and then understanding the spirit of what the application is and what staff is requiring of them. So I can tell you that as a citizen. So now I'll take my chair hat off and just let you know that I've seen stuff like that happen before. This helps protect against that. It's nothing that binds them to have to do it exactly like this, but there's an understanding that goes along with this. It's kind of like intent language for when you read a legal document. So I don't read legalese very well, but the intent documentation that goes along with it makes me go, aha.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
if I could add to that as well. Their request for the low-density residential future land use map designation to apply to this portion of this site also encompasses this area. So
Okay.
they are required to develop with a density under 3 units per acre.
Great.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Ma'am, come on. Good evening. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Darcy Dilly, and my address is 5205 North Sun Shimmer Way, Meridian,
Okay.
Idaho.
Can you hear that okay? Good. Okay. Yep. Just wanted to got to make sure we can hear you.
Great, sorry. So I'm from Meridian. I was born and raised here out on Star Road. I attended Zion Elementary School when it was Zion Elementary School. I attended Meridian Middle School before it burned down, and then it was rebuilt. Graduated from Meridian High School. I'm a real estate professional with Keller Williams Realty Boise, and I've been in this industry nearly 8 years. I've known Dave my whole life. I grew up out on Star Road, his backyard backed against mine, and I asked him if I could sit next to him while he was working on developing this this project, Dave Young. So I sat next to him and Kimley Horn, and I just observed and listened. At some point, Dave asked if I would meet with the neighbors of this project. And so for about 6 months, myself and members of my team and members of Dave's team met with all the neighbors that would meet with us. And there were a lot of them, which was awesome. We met them in their homes. We sat at their kitchen tables. We walked their properties. We had conversations about the project. We showed them proposed plat maps. We answered questions, discussed their lifestyles, and asked them what was most important to them. We asked them what they wanted this community to look like. We asked about builder teams, who they wanted to see in there, what they wanted the homes to look like, what was important to them about how the community was shaped and what it offered. And if you haven't heard from the neighbors in this area, Hollis just one, but they're incredibly educated about the area in which they live. They know a lot of builder teams. I was pretty impressed with all of the information that they knew about the valley, how it's growing, and the process of development. And in my time with this project, Dave's done a really good job of keeping the neighbors in mind while also adhering to the density requirements that the city has been asking him for. And the community itself is beautiful. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on Dave's commitment to the neighbors and listening to them and what they ultimately want this community to look like. I think he's been very respectful to what the neighbors are looking for and has tried to provide that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody else like to come up? Is there anybody online? I don't remember seeing anybody on there, but
Mr. Chair, there are 2 attendees online. Do you want them to raise their hand if they'd like to speak?
yep, if the attendees, if either one of you want to speak, please hit the raise hand button. I'll give you a second for that. One more time for anybody in here. I'd say going, gone with that. So the applicant would like to come back up.
Mr. Chair,
Mhm.
Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street. And, in terms of the conversation just now, I would agree with Sonia's comments about the application of the low-density residential on the holding area. But again, we can't develop that until the utilities are available. So other than that, I don't have any more to add unless there's questions from the commission.
Commissioners, any final questions? Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, so just one thing before we close, and just to make sure I'm on the right page with kind of what the discussion was had. Are there any, I know there's a preference for phase 4 to be separate and distinct to give that homeowner as much time. If we were to recommend the consolidation of phase 4 and phase 3, are there any strong, is there any strong opposition that you have, or is that fine? Just would like to err on the side of giving them more.
We would like to give that homeowner more time. So, there are hills to die on. But we would like to give that homeowner more time if it's possible. So, but we, obviously we would very much appreciate a positive recommendation, and we always like to hear from the Planning and Zoning Commission what your thoughts are to be included in that recommendation, and then we can take that to the council and continue the conversation.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
And with that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2023-0055 for Burnside Ridge Estates.
So moved. Second.
It's moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2023-0055. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No nays, so have closed the public hearing. Who would like to go first? Any and all.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Larcher, go right ahead.
Took me a minute to remember this because 2021 was a little whiles back, but it all looks good. And now that there are other subdivisions in the area, it fits even more, especially with the low density. I guess my only comment is, and I know that there'll be continued conversations over the Culkins lateral. Your concept is field and meadows and gardens and barnyards, and to tile in the open space, or excuse me, the lateral seems to kind of go against that grain. And I understand that the space will be wide enough to go through, but, and you'll put landscaping in and what that needs, but as a citizen of Meridian, as a commissioner on this board, the more we're tiling in, the more we're taking the history of the farm that came with it in the first place. And with you trying to honor the farm life out there to tile it in, I hope you can come up with a good solution to possibly keep, if not all of it, some of it open. I know irrigation has a very definite way of how they want to do things, and so they're difficult to work with. And I respect that and understand that because water's been a big deal for a very long time. But I would say the only thing that I would like to see is, as a commissioner and as a citizen, to see that those laterals continue to stay open. Other than that, the phasing and the holding area, it all makes sense to me.
Okay.
I would like to comment.
Right ahead, Commissioner Garrett.
I'm on the other side of that tiling. I come from another community where we had ditches, and it was much better to have them piped than it was to leave them open, from an efficiency standpoint and from an evaporation standpoint. So the farmers actually appreciated the piping from a standpoint of having the irrigation canals running.
Okay. Anybody else? Commissioner Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a couple comments. I appreciate the willingness to reach out to the neighbors, and I appreciate the testimony of Darcy and her efforts. So thank you for that. And I appreciate the willingness to work with the city on the open space area. I'm confident you will get that sort of sorted out. I like the amenities. I like the number of amenities. It looks like it's double. I appreciate the sort of agricultural tribute and the transition from the more city to the larger, more expansive rural type existing community. And I am satisfied that with the responses and about the situation, the current situation in that region and the growth that's occurred, and hopefully that circumstances have changed since the last time an applicant an application for this property came forward. With that said, I guess the only thing I would not favor that the applicant has proposed is modifying the language. I think after this discussion, I've learned a little bit about the importance of having that in phase 3, or even maybe the chairman's proposed alternative of combining the last 2 phases. So I can't say that I'm in favor of that piece. I understand that might mean a little less time for that one existing homeowner. But, you know, everything we do here is a little bit of a trade-off. So overall, I appreciate the work that's been put in. I like the proposal, and those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'll weigh in here. Lots of things about this that I like. I like the transition in density. I like the fact that it doesn't go from, directly from one to the other. It just, like we had to do it that way. This seems like it has a little bit more thought. Geography probably plays into that a lot. Seems like a lot of this is dictated by geography. I kind of like areas like that. You get out of the flat garage farms that are out there. The work on the low density area against the large county lots that are there, that's, again, all of that is really great. I like the entrance off of Linder, how that looks, how it flows. That really creates something that can be expanded on when the property to the west develops. So kind of makes a little bit more grandiose kind of opening and flow to go through there. So as far as the holding area, completely understand. I'm glad there is a concept plan that goes along with that, just for kind of a further, future reference. Just this is kind of what we hope to make it look like. That helps kind of protect everybody involved and gives an idea of what that may look like in the future when it does develop. So I'm kind of with Commissioner Grace. I think that the wording that staff has is appropriate, especially if we do consider, a recommendation of having them combine phases 3 and 4. So, again, we have to consider the entire community, and not just necessarily one person. I understand the one person is probably what helped make this all available. But at the same time, it just seems like there's a lot of emphasis on that, where combining those 2 phases would kind of make this a little bit easier proposition as we move forward, or as it does move forward. I am in the same position on the Culkins lateral. I would like to see that done more naturally. There's an opportunity to do so. I understand it comes at a cost. I don't want to impede anybody's ability to make some money off of this, but at the same time, it does that sets the precedence for what everybody's going to do on the other sides of it. So it would be nice to take the opportunity to do that. I would highly recommend that you go look at the pathway that is between 10 Mile and Meridian. It's beautiful. It is a piece of the community over there, and it is used by everyone. So it just kind of elevates the property around it. It gives people a sense of community. People are pretty protective of that area and the ducks over there. So even riding a bike, you stop for ducks. People will let you know if you don't. For certain. So would be nice to see that. In my mind, it would be nice to see that left as part of the community. So understanding that may not be the way it rolls out. I think that's about all I have on it. So overall, I think it's going to be a good addition to the city. So I think it's well done. And I love the amenities and the concepts on that. So that's pretty amazing to me. So I love the fact that you're going to take some existing material and really incorporate that into it. We had an application not too long ago that they were trying to figure out what to do with some historical buildings that were there, and just trying to figure out how to even do anything with that delayed the application for a long time. So the fact that you guys are doing that is on the front of this application is, I think, a great thing for the community. So,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
just putting it out there, Drew Eggers dual silos are available to be moved to your your
There you
property
go.
to save them in the city of Meridian,
you
so
go.
we would love to see that not in a industrial park, but you already have
That's right.
concepts of silos there. You could put a beautiful, and Corey, whoever the developer is going to take it down for you, all you have to do is move
All you
it.
gotta do is move it. Bill has their number.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of echo pretty much everything that's been said. On the Calkins lateral side, I'm pretty much as close to a fence sitter as you can get. I see the value on either side of things, and I'm confident that you'll work that out with staff. And the language seems like it's fine that will enable that to happen. I think the one thing that I think is kind of not fully buttoned up but it seems like everyone's trending in the right direction, or not right direction, but the same direction is around that phase 3, phase 4. I agree with you, Mr. Chair. I would probably like to see them combined, but I don't know that it needs to be combined depending on kind of where the rest of the commission is at. But broadly, I'm supportive of this. I think that's just kind of the last thing that I'd like to see. If you don't know if we have some discussion on, it seems like Commissioner Grace and you might be in favor of consolidating those, but I don't know if anyone else has some takes.
That's just, and the nice thing about being on the commission for that is we can set that as a recommendation if that's the way that the motion goes, and city council can say, no, we're not going to do it that way. So that's the good thing about it. And generally speaking, this is our way of just putting it on the record that might make the build out and the transition easier in the long run for the city as a whole. So, but I don't get to make motions, so that's up to somebody else. Commissioner Sandoval, go ahead.
Now that I understand the phasing, it makes sense. And the fact that you reached out and you have so much involvement from the community, I can really appreciate that. The one thing I really was concerned about, was the additional burden to city services, which I'm sure you are as well. So I really poured through all the material. I think you did a good job with the holding area, separating that. The only other thing I really saw was the response time from fire was 10 minutes, which is still within their 12-minute recommendation for aerial. Other than that, I don't really see anything that's in conflict. So yeah, I do like the phasing plan the way it is though with the 4.
Okay. Good. Everybody has spoken, so I'm happy to take more conversation or emotion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council file number H 2023-0055 as presented the staff report for the hearing date of April 4th, 2024, with one modification, with the understanding that the holding area will not be developed until services are available.
I think that's already in the staff report. Are we okay with that? Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Guess I should probably read my own notes here. It's been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2023-0055 with the aforementioned modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And with that, I will take one more motion.
Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.